Welcome to the Hispanic Student Association Podcast Cena, a podcast that will explore and discuss Hispanic/Latino cultures, traditions, and experiences. Our very first episode, we'll talk about Dia de los Muertos, but first, let's take a moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Derek Herrera Diaz. I'm a sophomore here at CBU. I am majoring in elementary education.
My name is Andrea Hernandez Garcia. I am a nursing major. I am a junior.
I am Elizabeth Enamorado. I am a natural science major with a minor in Spanish, and I am a freshman.
Yeah. So, like mentioned, we're talking about Dia de los Muertos, known here as Day of the Dead. So it's a holiday celebrated by Mexican communities, but not just Mexican, but the entire Latin American continent celebrates this holiday. With that being said, could you explain how the holiday is celebrated? Do you all know?
Honestly, how my family celebrates it is we all come together at my aunt's house, and we make mole, we make galletas de Dia de los Muertos, also known as toqueres for the fancy terminology, and then we also do tamales, but it's just mostly for us to, come together and be with family.
Yeah, it's like a dinner gathering for you.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome.
My family, we don't really celebrate it, but I do know we send money to Mexico in honor to give money, give flowers, set up an ofrenda for the people who have died in my family. Here, sometimes we do buy pan de muerto.
Yeah. So how we've seen it being celebrated, traditionally in pop culture, but also as it is as a tradition in Mexico, they have the altar, the ofrenda, which is how it's called in Spanish, and it's decorated with symbols of also the dead, traditional symbols. They have the dead. We see the miracle flowers, skulls, but also just things that person did or that they owned when they were alive to represent them as a person. And I've known about Dia de los Muertos not celebrated, like you mentioned. It was more so because, I was a baker, so I made the bread of the dead, and we sold it. It wasn't so much like we celebrated it, but we made some money out of it.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about. I feel like a lot of people were exposed to Day of the Dead through the film Coco by Pixar, which is a wonderful film. So I think this movie represents the holiday very well. Not just the holiday, but the entire Mexican community. The culture was very wonderfully represented. What y'all think?
Yeah, Coco made me cry. Best movie, honestly. I highly recommend it for anyone that wants to watch it to learn a little bit more about Dia de los Muertos. It was a very interesting film. Not only did it grasp the traditions that we see during this holiday, but it also incorporated different, the form of isolation that some of us feel because we don't celebrate it often. Like I said earlier, I don't celebrate it, but watching this film made me feel like, oh yeah, I can get up and do this, or I can go out and explore this kind of thing. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. What do you have to say, Elizabeth?
So Coco, I'm very emotional as it is. Coco made me cry, but Coco made me realize how we can take something so extraordinary and actually put it into not only words, but also to pictures and make it into a movie. Kids, not only kids, but adults can also enjoy this movie. And it just really shined a light on what the Dia de los Muertos truly is.
I definitely agree. I think one wonderful aspect of the film, one film that really stuck out to me, whenever he hit on the roof to play the guitar and he had the violins and the candles and the ofrenda, I thought that was awesome because I grew up in a pretty similar spot in Mexico. Very dense, short buildings, but it was packed. It was a packed community. I feel like the city. I don't know if it was fictional or it was definitely based off of Mexican cities, and it's very different compared to how you see a city over here. So I thought that the representation of, like they did the research, the representation of the cities and of the people was very well done. Okay. So how does Dia de los Muertos portray death and compare and contrast this to other celebrations of death? So that is obviously the big idea of Day of the Dead is death itself. But if you see any decorations or any aesthetics of Day of the Dead, it's incredibly colorful. Just tons of bright neon colors. In fact, right here, this cover for the table, we can see neon colors, and that those are typically the colors associated with Day of the Dead. So I say that the holiday, it celebrates death in a way that may not seem very traditional. It's very positive. Yeah. What do you have to say about that?
I definitely agree with you. Day of the Dead, when we think of death, it's mostly like gloomy, dark colors, very negative effect towards it. But Dia de los Muertos is just all about celebration. You see all these different colored flowers. As you said, this tablecloth is different colors. I think each has their own symbol, like what they mean, but I am not too knowledgeable about what each stands for. And it's just like a little party where we celebrate death. Mm-hmm. To an outsider, it seems a little weird, but it really isn't. It's just a sign of respect and basically cherish the ones who are dead as if they are still here, but in spirit.
So I'm going to incorporate something that I learned growing up. So Dia de los Muertos it's not been very traditional in my family, obviously. But my grandmother would actually send us gifts, and she would always make sure to put a Cathedra in there. And I thought that was pretty unique, because a Cathedra is someone who's rich. And so she would always put in these special little gifts, making us seem like the Cathedra. And so she would just make sure to put us in our little black outfits and our little the celebrating the dead makeup, and it was just a fun celebration for us. Obviously, I don't do that anymore because
you get old.
No.
But I mean, yeah, I think it's not so much about celebrating the death, but more so celebrating the people that were once with us. Because I feel like every person, even though it's called Day of the Dead, it's more so a remembrance day. It's not so much the focus on that they're gone, but that they were here. And I think that's comparing it to a funeral. I like to do this because the funeral you all wear black, and it's gloomy and it's depressing. Like you don't want to be at a funeral. And having this form of vibrant expression is much more. I don't want to say palatable, but it feels nice. It feels warm. Even the symbolism of the candles and the golden flowers. It's just a warm holiday. Like you feel. What's the word I'm looking for? Is like you feel soothed. Like it's not so much like a depressing.
Yeah, it's kind of soothing.
It feels more positive. Yeah.
Like we mentioned, Day of the Dead. It is a spiritual holiday. Based on the history of the holiday, it is like a mix, a hybrid of Native American celebrations and Catholic celebrations. So, which is typically a big no-no when it comes to Christianity, mixing it with some other spiritual celebration. But I think it's wonderfully represented. A wonderful representation of both of these celebrations. So there is a lot of spirituality in both of these holidays. Okay, so there has been a lot of comparisons of Day of the Dead to Halloween, celebrated October 31st. Day of the Dead is celebrated on November 1st and 2nd. So they're very close in proximity, and I can also understand a lot of the similarities. But they are very different holidays. I want to start with comparing the holiday, why people get them mixed up. So both holidays are very colorful. I'd argue. I think both of them. They both are very festive holidays too, and both include sweets, but obviously very different from each other. It's one of the contrasts we want to point out here. And how do you dress up in Halloween is up to you. It's become a pop culture holiday. It's not. It is. There are some religious aspects to it, and we'll go into that as well. But Day of the Dead, even though it is becoming more secular, it is rooted a lot in spirituality, and a lot of the costumes. I wouldn't even like to say costumes for Day of the Dead. A lot of the I guess, garb and how you present yourself in Day of the Dead has a meaning. It's very symbolic of the holiday. So you dress up as a skeleton, and you very fancy garb. The garb and the presentation that we use in the Day of the Dead is of a Cathedra, and a Cathedra is it's almost like, it came from a political cartoon I have here from the National Geographic cartoonist Jose Guadalupe Posada. He created a personification of death in French garb. And this was a social commentary on Mexicans trying to emulate European sophistication and their wealth. So Diego Rivera, who was the husband of Frida Kahlo, he presented this woman as La Catrina, which is slang for rich. So, and it became this ubiquitous symbol because of how it represented Mexican culture. Like it stemmed from its European roots, but also implemented a lot of the spirituality and piety of Native American celebrations and Catholicism. And we want to talk a little bit about the sweets involved in Day of the Dead, because like I mentioned, my family comes from a line of bakers, and we create every November Day of the Dead, bread of the dead. And bread of the dead is heavily coated in sugar. And not to give away the secret formula that we use, but we use orange scent, and that gives it a very distinct flavor, and a very distinct flavor from all the other pastries created in Mexican bakeries. So would you like to talk about any sweets?
Yeah, so mine is toques o galletas de Dia de los Muertos. So basically, it's just a Mexican cookie. It's full of sugar, and we color our sugar. So we have purple, blue, pink, orange, any color you think of, we do it. And so it's just a cookie that has been passed down from generations, or at least in my family. And I'm not going to say anything else, or else I would be spilling my whole secret family recipe. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, absolutely. We can see that the sweets that we use in Day of the Dead have a very specific symbolism. Where Halloween, you can eat a Twix and you can eat a Milky Way, but there's not a lot of history behind these candies. Right. What else do you want to comment about, like the comparisons and contrasts of Halloween and Day of the Dead?
Okay, so most people think that Halloween is a one night. Kids get to dress up in whatever costume they like. And then for the Day of the Dead, since it's more expansive, it's more heavy based. Well, not heavy, but it's more spiritual than the Day of the Dead, or not the Day of Halloween. There are 2 days, so one's specifically to set up the ofrendas, and the other day is for the little kids to learn about the family that is on the ofrenda, because obviously they weren't alive when that family passed away. And so there's a huge difference between Halloween and the Day of the Dead.
Yeah. There's also where it originated in. Day of the Dead obviously originated in Mexico, whereas Halloween originated in Ireland. As we said, the purpose for Day of the Dead is to remember friends and family who are dead, whereas Halloween is an appreciation of the afterlife and survival after death, so it kind of is the same. However, we have different ways of celebrating it. Day of the Dead, we leave food offerings and ofrendas that we have at the altars. We visit cemeteries, have a picture of the people, our loved ones. For Halloween, we carve jack-o'-lanterns, we go out and get candy. Adults like to get drunk. And it's just all this ghouls, vampires, werewolves kind of stuff, whereas Dia de los Muertos is just centered down to one specific like La Catrina, Las Calaveras, all these skulls that we see. And also the pastries of, as we said, pan de muerto there is. Halloween, you have all these different kinds of cookies, sugar cookies. People bake pumpkin pie, candies of all sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I do want to talk about how Day of the Dead is not only celebrated in Mexico, like mentioned before, it is a Latin American, a whole Latin American celebration. According to the National Geographic, like it's celebrated in different ways in Guatemala and this place Zumpango. They fly giant kites. It says here up to 60 feet tall, which is not something that you see in Mexican celebrations of Day of the Dead. The kites are decorated with a lot of religious symbols, including the Virgin Mary, but also just flags from around the world. It is a wonderful feat to see. Again, in Bolivia is a completely different way how it's celebrated. They leave, obviously, they leave gifts for those who passed, including llama meat, which is popular down there, and fermented corn drinks. And it's also being widely celebrated now here in Hispanic and Latino communities in America. The biggest one being in Hollywood, Los Angeles. It hosts the largest Day of the Dead celebrations outside of Mexico. So we see Day of the Dead being an important holiday, not only to those with Mexican roots, but like across the entire Latin American spectrum. And it is wonderful to see how such a big and identifying holiday is celebrated throughout the world. All right, for this segment, we're going to talk about a hot topic relating to the subject that we were discussing, and we're going to talk about misconceptions of Day of the Dead. I think the biggest misconception would be that it's Halloween, but in Mexico. Well, Halloween is a holiday in Mexico, sometimes called Dia de los Muertos. It's not the same thing. Yeah, I feel like it can be offensive if you call it the same thing. Very different holidays for very different reasons.
It's also not a cult.
No.
It's nothing like none of that jitter mix that people might assume that it is. Going to mass is literally an essential part of this, so it's not a cult.
Yeah.
Please don't think it's a cult.
Promise.
Yeah, it's not a worship of the dead. Like we mentioned, it's not a celebration of death, but rather celebration of those who have lived, who have died. Not like we're happy that these people died. That's not the case at all.
It's their celebration.
We welcome the opportunity that they had given us by being in our lives. Their presence, basically, what they've taught us, how it's helped our own existence.
It's a positive holiday, not a negative one. I feel that's also can be a big misconception because you see a lot of obviously symbols about skulls and also I guess a lot of the pious symbols that we use can be seen as cultish or maybe otherworldly, but it's part of the tradition. It's a lot about respecting of values that have been implemented in Mexico for a long time. So it's not like a small thing, again, that's kind of like leading to the cult. It's not something we keep hidden. It's so widely celebrated throughout the entire country.
Yeah. Also, altars or ofrendas. We're not worshiping our dead relatives, friends. It's more of an offering of our love and remembering them in an honorable way. And it's not a sad ritual either. It's happiness, as we said, how they impacted us, our friends and our family that lived,
Lived with us.
So obviously, the Day of the Dead is very special to me because obviously they're relatives I never got to meet, but it's just it's a way for my family to understand who we really are. It's a way to show not only my younger siblings but me as well. Hey, these were your family members. She taught her daughter how to cook, how to clean, and then that was just passed forward. We do have food that was passed on from
From many generations.
Yes, and we've kept it the same. We've obviously never changed the recipe. We might incorporate just some little details here and there, but the main concept of the dish is still there. So our relatives would be very happy. We have not changed the recipe.
Another misconception I want to clear up, even though it is rooted in pious principles, the holiday, Day of the Dead, it's not strictly a pious holiday. You don't have to be religious to participate in it. It's becoming quite secular as of recently. But as long as you respect the values and those who are celebrating the holiday, you'll be welcome. I feel like there can also be a sense of gatekeeping for the holiday, but we want to invite people to celebrate the holiday. We think it's a beautiful celebration, and if you're willing to respect the traditions and take the time to learn about them, absolutely you can be a part of Day of the Dead.
It's also not a strange ritual or anything. It's just as if you're going to the graveyard and leaving flowers or teddy bears on a loved one's grave. And as you said earlier, it's a moment of reflection of one's life, the cycle of life and death, how people come and go, and how we are able to celebrate them and remember them.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you so much, Andrea, for coming to the podcast. It was a pleasure talking with you guys about Dia de los Muertos. I hope that we continue to have interesting conversations like this in Cena podcast. To the viewers, if you thought today's conversation was interesting, please go and follow the Hispanic Student Association at CBU HSA on Instagram to stay updated on club events, meetings, and the release of our podcast episodes. If you're interested in the club or want to become an HSA member, please contact Juan Ventura. He is the president, and for information about the club and how to become a member. Thank you so much.